So, quick summaries to who I am and what we do and all the rest of it. How I got into APRS. A few years back, the talk given at one of the RARENet meetings by Ross G6GDI, and I thought, oh, this APRS sounds interesting. And it's one of these things, it can become a bit obsessive. So it ended up where I ended up developing this APRS TNC DigiTracker, which is a small unit that we use as a TNC DigiTracker or a general APRS unit. After that, I then started developing some software, so I've ended up developing an APRS software for normal use with the tracker, but also for HF use as well, using sending APRS over digital modes, such as PSK63, MFSK16, all the rest of it. A bit more detail on that later. And we also run a small business, cross-country wireless, which you probably see us at work occasionally running. And we make SDR receivers. We're developing an SDR transceiver, which seems to be one of these projects going on, but it will come out eventually. We make the DigiTracker HF antennas, and we make a few other bits and pieces. 80% of what we make goes overseas. So it's, we have quite an unusual viewpoint of what's happening in the amateur radio field, especially in the States, funny enough. So it's, may bring a bit of that up later in some of the discussions, certainly about APRS, because if you understand what's happening over there, you understand what's happening in some of the amateur radio fields. You suddenly wonder, why have they developed that? And that's the reason why. Right, okay, so APRS, what is it? Its current name is Automatic Packet Reporting System. It was called Automatic Position Reporting System for quite a while, but the guy who invented it decided, well, it's really not just for positioning, but also for messaging and things like that. And you've got the grand thing, so one of these sort of mission statement things. It's a two-way tactical real-time digital communication system. Hey, that sounds grand, doesn't it? Basically what you can do, you can use it to share information on what's happening, what's going on in the local area. You can send the local repeater details, the frequencies, tones. If you have a D-star repeater, for example, you can send all the information about that on it. In fact, I think a lot of that already appears in this area. We can also use it for universal text messaging for amateur radio. You can send small messages. Think of something like a Twitter feed these days. And this was like 20 years ago, long before Twitter was invented. And radio amateurs were doing it then. First thing is, it's an open format. Anybody can use it. All you need really is a call sign to put on the tracker or on the internet system, and you're away. So, any questions so far? Some silence. It's working. Right, so this talk was originally a talk I gave to RARENet at the Spring Convention this year. And some of these things you'll see that, all right, it's a little bit biased towards RARENet, but you probably understand it. Well, RARENet's sort of an emergency service provided by radio amateurs. And they use a lot of APRS. They also do a lot of APRS internet gateways, things like that. One of the things it's widely used for is sort of outstation tracking. Say you've got somebody driving out to some checkpoint or something like that, and they radio in as one of our members in RARENet, the Volta group. Steve, you'll know this guy.
Never heard of him.
You've never heard of him. And, he always got lost going to checkpoints, and we ended up putting an APRS beacon in his car, so that when he radioed in, I don't know where I am. Yes, we do. You turn left, right, carry on a bit, you're there. So, there's things like that, quite useful. Lead, tail and sweep tracking. A lot of the RARENet events are sort of sponsored walks. A lot of the midnight walks generated money for charity. So you'd have somebody at the front of the walk, somebody at the back, and the sweep team, so that you can display a map and the organisers can see where are they now. And I know the Bolton Hospice Walk, they used to check the map to find they were just about to go into the Town Hall Square. And as they're about to turn, start the music and start the applause. So, you know, they come up and they wonder, oh, how did they know I was here? The little things like that. Sometimes it's used for telemetry in the environment. So you can measure various things. There's a system I've developed for the RSGB, and it's a HF noise measuring system. And there's about 20 odd receivers out around the UK and other parts of the world. And they're reported in on measuring 5 spot frequencies on the HF bands, measuring the background noise. And they report in every 10 minutes by sending an APRS message with an APRS telemetry package. And the RSGB now, they're about to put this website on the main website. But you can go on, you can look at the general trends of noise for all these different stations. You can see, you know, what's happening, what the trend is. The idea was, well, is noise getting, is there more noise, is there less noise? You know, is it different in the countryside, is it different in urban areas? And there's an awful lot of information been picked up already on the test phase. One thing that's very handy, we did suggest that some clubs may get some of these receivers. The idea being is that, say you have interference, and you want Ofcom to come out and have a look at it. Well, all this telemetry can be viewed on a website. So you can just say, right, well, can you make a log of the noise, please? I can do one better than that. Have a look at this web link. And you've got all the telemetry graphs of all the 5 frequencies over, say, the past week. And you can see exactly when the noise came on, when it went on. And that's been very useful. I found it extremely useful in finding out that my next door neighbour has a plasma TV. I never realised that until I could see the noise come up on 80 metres at 4 o'clock every evening when he switches it on. And you know, very handy for you know, checking, right, does this piece of ferrite work on it? Is that sort of the effect? So if I switch this on, does the noise go up over a period of time? And over a period of time I've managed to get the noise floor at my home quite a low level. Other uses for RENET, lone worker operator. You've got somebody out on the hilltop somewhere. You can send messages to them. You don't need to use a voice net to speak to them. You just send a quick APRS message. And HF messaging. There's a thing called global set in the event of major events. Whereas, say, a recent one was Slovakia, where they had extreme flooding. And a lot of radiometers were used to provide comms for mainly for the Austrian fire brigade. And they are people with large water pumps in Slovakia pumping water away from the flooded area. And it was all the comms were down because a lot of power was down as well. So they ended up using various forms of radio, including APRS, to track where the various vehicles were. So that's the sort of thing that could be used for, you know, RENET type activities. Any questions? No? Good, good. So you can see it's not just one, you know, there's a bit of a few different uses to it. So, APRS, well, we tend to think of APRS, a lot of people think of it as the mobile positioning system. So we'll look at the VHF radio side of it. If you have less than 2 meters, 144.8 megahertz, you'll hear the odd burst of APRS packets every so often. And these can go, you know, say a mobile driving around, and send a message, a beacon out, and it's received by a local station, say. The thing is with this on VHF, you can use digipeaters, which are digital repeaters. Now these are run by, you know, amateurs and they're on home stations. You can have sort of high digipeaters and internet gateways as well. In other countries of the world, there's no problem licensing these things. In the UK there is. I'll go into this in a bit about this. You can digipete in the UK without any problem. So like a local station can hear this guy's packet, he sees this particular part of this word wide 1-1, So I think, this is a mobile station, I'll retransmit his signal. So it's retransmitted, and then say a station on a hilltop picked it up. You can then retransmit it again, retransmit it 2 or 3 times, until it reaches a home station who's connected to the internet. And then that can be sent to what's called the APRS internet system. Now, some years back, digipeater systems were quite widely used because the internet system at that time wasn't very well developed, certainly in the more rural areas. But these days, there's a lot more internet gateways, there's not too much digipeating going on. Everybody happy with that? Because sometimes that can get a bit confusing on that one. Now what's happened, the few auditors in the States have developed this APRS internet system where you can have what's called a client. So you can have a receiver, you can have a TNC unit and a computer. So that every APRS message that comes in can go to the computer, can display on the computer, can also send to the various servers and then back to the main first, second and third servers. And the idea is then that your local traffic that you hear within 10, 15 miles of your station is then relayed to everybody else in the world. And they can look on the map or look at all the data coming in and see who's there. Now the idea of this is that it can also work 2 ways. If you have these APRS messages, you can actually send a message. If you know the call sign of the guy you're talking to, it's possible to send a message, say over 2 meters, or mobile phone app, as it happens these days, using one of these programs, via this internet system. And if the guy is in range of an eye gate at the far end, it'll pop out and he'll get the message. And it's possible to get 2-way messaging all the way around the world using this system, using amateur frequencies and this internet system. An interesting point in the UK, I mentioned before about this licensing problem. There's a thing in the UK, and it's the Communications Act 2004, which licensed all the internet service providers and the mobile operators. And for a mobile operator to connect to an internet system, you've got to pay Ofcom a fairly hefty license fee. Now, radio amateurs, when through this law, were forgotten about. And all of a sudden they realise, hang on, you've got these amateurs wanting to connect amateur traffic from the amateur service to somebody's internet system. And if you ask them, if you sort of ring up your Virgin or BT and ask them, I want to connect my amateur radio traffic to your internet system, the answer should be no, because you haven't got a license to connect to it. So what Ofcom have done, they've done the classic British fudge, where when you apply, you can apply for a notice of variation, and you get a nice little call sign, an MB7 call sign, and it means that then they know that you've asked permission that what is this third-party traffic, and you're not going to get a knock on the door, or worse still, a plop on the mat, saying, why are you sending third-party traffic to such and such as internet system? So really, some people wonder why you have to apply for this notice of variation. Well, this is the reason why, because of the this legality. People forgot about regulators.
So the internet service providers can accept this as
That's right.
legitimate way around.
The interesting point is that I actually help the guy who does all the things for the RSGB. He goes through the applications, and I helped him with what's the new stuff that's coming in various forms of APRS, and how does it apply to this law. The interesting point is, because it's APRS traffic has a call sign in it, you can identify it as traffic from the amateur service. So that's definitely amateur traffic. You can't send that to your internet provider without permission. I've got a web SDR receiver picking half the HF bandwidth in various slots. I can send that on the amateur bands because nobody can identify an amateur call from it. And that's just the difference. It's peculiarities of the law and how to look at it. So it's, it gets a bit bizarre on that. So everybody happy with that? You sometimes wonder, well, why has he had to apply for an iGate license? Why has he got some funny call sign?
How would it work if someone's trying to remote control a radio over the internet?
Well, this is this is the same sort of thing. It's not been clearly defined yet.
You don't apply for an MD.
No, that's it. They're still scratching their heads over that. Because, there's a lot of people, yes, technically you can do it, but the legalities of doing it over somebody's internet system, again, because it's classed as the amateur service. The amateur service has certain frequencies. The rights with radio amateurs come because it's classed in the ITU as an amateur service. So, and Ofcom have said, and the government have, in this law, have said that, right, the various services must connect but have a license to do it. At least we're not having to pay thousands of pounds to get the license to do it. Just apply for an NOV. But yeah, a lot of these things are grey areas. And,
don't kick up too much fuss.
Yeah, if it's not got an obvious amateur call sign in the text, you're okay. It seems to be the answer. Right, here are the various things and bits and pieces. This is the digi-tracker that we made. Little unit, it's got a built-in GPS receiver. It's this fill-in I mentioned before. It can be used to pick up mobile signals and transmit them. It's also got a feature that another one has a digi-repeater. And the idea was for the likes of Rainer to go on some event or a call out, and you can say to one operator, right, go up that hill, set your digi-repeater, and every APRS signal that he receives will then be transmitted one hop back to your control point. So that's one feature on it. There's a USB output. You can feed it to a PC for setup and messaging with the PC. But it now has a Bluetooth unit built into it to work to an app which I'll develop, which we'll show later. Right, this is the APRS messenger. This program originally started off as just a little program to program the digi-tracker. And it's ended up with a bit of an elephant. There's that much in it now. You can use it for sending messages, sending beacons. You can send the beacons directly to the APRS internet system. You can send it via one of the digi-trackers. We can also send it over HF using the various digital modes. Recently we've added MFSK16, which is a really efficient digital mode. And the best reception of any APRS packet so far is from a beacon I sent some months back on 30 metres. Excuse me. And it was picked up in Michigan, in the States. So I think, oh yeah, about 4,000 miles, that's all right. Well, this is 30 metres midday. The band isn't open then. It is for about 10 minutes long path. So instead of doing 4,000 miles, it's done up to like 21,000 miles around the earth. Using this system. That was 40 watts to an antenna that wasn't even tuned up correctly. So it just goes to show that sometimes the best results you get is something that's a bit, a little wire up a tree, and I'll just try this for 5 minutes. And it works, and then the rest of the time it doesn't. We're all done that. Right, enough. Some of these programs, another one, yes, RedNet Messenger. This is based on the software of the APRS Messenger. And the original idea was to be able to send various text messages and structured messages over the different modes. And one of the features is that there's see on this side, little boxes against each of the different modes. And the idea is you can have this running on digimodes, and very often you don't know, well, what mode is it transmitting in? Well, there'll be a whole string of different text from each of the decoders. Each decoder is on a different mode. and you click on it now, you'll see, you know, sensible text on one of them. That's the mode it's transmitting on. And the idea was for radio use, you could actually use it on different modes. You transmit on, say, PSK31, and transmit, receive on, say, PSK31, transmit back on MFSK16. So anybody trying to listen in can't make head and tail of what's happening. We did this for RayNet, and you know, we designed it a different way. So, you know, so the family, they're using FLDigi, but funnily enough, we've now found that radio amateurs in South America have picked this up, because we can actually use the digipeater system, as we mentioned before. We can actually send a message, a PSK message, another station picks it up, and it will retransmit it if it's correct. And in South America, because most of them speak Spanish or Portuguese, it doesn't matter. You know, like over here, say, you know, if we're transmitting, we say you've got a continental station on HF, but if you don't really often make contact, and they can't really listen and find out what's going on. But in South America, it started off with the guys in Honduras started to download it. They told the mates in Costa Rica, they told the mates in Argentina, and they've all now got a copy of this program. So if there's some emergency in South America, all the surrounding countries come on and put the system to act as digipeters for the guy who's in the trouble zone. And I'm going to have to do a Spanish version of it, because at the moment it's all in English. Excuse me. Well, that's a program that's based on the APRS program. We've got a few running on this, so we can actually see it running later on the PC. Any questions on that?
Have the Americans taken this up as well?
Some of them have, yeah.
Because I mean, obviously they have a big amateur radio emergency network.
Oh yeah, well, that's right. Well, this is one of the things I'm finding with, you know, selling stuff to the States, is that there's a huge boom in amateur radio over there. And it's because people in the States want some form of emergency communication because of tornadoes, hurricanes, general, you know, weather things over there. So a lot of people take the equivalent of the foundational license, the technician license, just so they can get an amateur license, so they get a few handhelds. And finding now that a lot of amateurs are getting APRS in, say, an app, so that they can have some form of comms and positioning like that. You know, there's something like that going on. Right, this is what we developed as an app. APRS Messenger Android. So it's like a version of that. Here's an Android phone. Can't all see it from here, but oops, hang on, pick the right one. So we'll just select. We'll start beaconing. So a nice little text note to let you know that that's now connected using the app and the 3G system in the phone directly to the APRS internet system. It's got its GPS position already, and it's already sent that to it, and if you were to look on the map, you'd see that it will be there. An interesting point, when you're designing an app for Android, you've got to design it, because every time you go from portrait to landscape, the software stops and it has to restart again. So that's actually quite a difficult thing to sort out. Making plenty of noises, but that gives beacon, and there's various other features on it, and you know, various position details, maps. You can show, you know, a bit more on the slide. You can also send the various text messages that we mentioned before. Interesting thing is, what's the sort of ratio between sort of the hardware VHF systems to the apps? Do you think it's sort of 10 to 1? You think that's a bit reasonable? Since I brought that app out in last October, we've sold 12 Digitrackers. That app has been downloaded, check the numbers today, 6,833 times. And there's currently 2,546 people with it live on the handsets at the moment. So it just shows that, certainly in the States, where there's number of people, percentages, USA 43%, UK 8.22, Germany 5.9. So the great number of APRS users tend to be in the States, mainly for this emergency system that they consider amateur radio to be. But, the majority of new amateurs in the States, amateur radio to them isn't sort of HFDX in or sort of operating through repeaters, D-star. It's having a handheld so that if the weather gets bad, you've got some form of command. So it's a very interesting thing to consider that, you'll find that the manufacturers will start making things for that market. Things like the Warrington radios. Perfect example, that's where they came about. Because the market in the States is so huge for them. So any questions on that? Yeah, that's right. That's why the Chinese made them, because there's a huge demand for them in the States. And, to them, amateur radio these days is cheap coins when the lights go out. Right, that app will also work on a tablet as well. So, have you got an Android tablet?
Yeah, honestly,
Oh, right. I see you're checking out what I'm saying is right as I'm going along. Right. Let me know when I drift out. Yeah, if you go on Google Play, you'll find it. So, if you get it working, we'll send a couple of messages just to demonstrate. Bit of a challenge. Sort of sending a message. Well, you put it down now, that's it. Not playing, that's it. Right, so there are other systems, apart from Android. Windows, you can get a very good app, which is APRS IS32. The software author lives in Florida. Very good software author. He's done an awful lot to get a lot of APRS development done. I've worked with him to get the APRS messenger program compatible with his. You can actually run the two programs together. Use mine as an HF section for this. I've also got this running in the background at the moment, so when we finish the talk we can bring the local map up to see who's on and who's active and what sort of activity there is in this area. You can get the APRS on Linux. That's the Exaster program. It's a bit clunky, but it works. You can actually get the original APRS IS32 program working very well, and that's what we've got on. If you've done APRS before, you've probably come across a program called UIView, and really now that's obsolete. The problem is, the guy who wrote it died some while back, and he destroyed. One of his requests was the source code was to be destroyed, so that nobody could modify the program. The problem is, time's gone on, things have changed. Unfortunately, the program can't change with it. The current Kenwood handhelds have a simple feature that in this program, a very tidy programmer, if there are any spaces after the text, he cleared them out. It thought to be wrong. But on the new Kenwood handheld, if you put a space at the end, it's actually a character. And that's, in certain positions, it would give a space. So it would end up where that... Someone send me a message. Right, in UIView, it will give a completely incorrect position for that handheld in that position. So you'll end up where you'll see on the map suddenly a mobile that seems to have shot halfway across the country, and that's probably the reason why, because it's been picked up by stations running UIView. It's a pity because it was really good software as well. Right, these are some other Android products. There's one that's based on Google Maps. That's the APRS Droid. At the time I tried it, it was a little bit clunky and it was paid for by advertising. So find your Valentine now on the top of your APRS thing. You can even get it on an iPhone. Some of the early apps. Right, so that's the sort of thing so far. But what we can do is we'll show you a few bits and pieces. Let's just clear out of that. Now we're actually running Ubuntu Linux, but we've got the Windows program at APRS IS32 running on a Windows program running on this, using this program called Wine. I brought the Linux machine today because if anybody saw the news last night about Windows being attacked by the various things, this is one way around it is to go to Linux, which is completely, it's impossible for viruses to get on the thing because of the way they've got permissions on the files. There's no way anything external can get onto it without your clicking on something to get permission. So it can't be affected by viruses or any others. But you can see the sort of level of activity. We're looking at, this is over the time I've been giving the talk. For instance, around this area in Warrington, G4HYG-6. That's my phone a bit earlier. So that will display on, because it's gone onto this APRS internet system. All this is doing is just downloading the traffic from the internet system and displaying it on a map. But what you can do, for instance, let's see if we can do this. Sorry?
So the new VSS would be on it.
Oh, right, yeah. It's starting in here, is it? Oh, yes. Good. Right, so G4HYG-6. Let's send myself a message. Just check it out. That's all right. So I say hello, really. And there it is, you can see how quick it was, what, a second or two. And just there you can see that it's, oh, I see. G4VSS-15. Good evening, Chris. Thanks for an interesting talk. 735. So that's what the noise was before, yeah. Good. And also got G4PGO, who sent hello as well. And I've got the message saying test. Yep, test, that's it. Oh no. Yeah, mine's finally come through. Right, okay. You get the idea, you know, so anybody at a computer screen, or anybody, say, using a Kenwood radio on a mobile, or anybody using one of the Digitrackers sat on a hilltop somewhere, could use it to send quick text messages. And, you know, lots of use for it. You know, it's not just, you know, because you can have it on your handset, you can go from, say, Android app to iPhone app or something like that. You can use this as sort of a back channel while, you know, you're listening to the net, you know, sort of making comments. Oh, one thing to do, remember, is that all these are in plain language, and it's very open for people to see. So be careful what you write, because it may come back and bite you. There's one guy who lives in Washington in the States called Art, and his idea of amateur radio is just to sit and look at the stream of messages. And if you see a bit of, you know, two-way contact going on, he'll chip in and say hello. And I spoke to him a few times where we're, you know, talking across town to somebody else, sending a few messages, and all of a sudden you get this guy, Archie, how are you doing? And you then have a three-way net on APRS, you know, using this messaging system. And, you know, it's there, it can be used, so there's no reason why not.
Quick question, how do you get a passcode?
Passcode, you just asked me. And it just dawned on me, I've not added it, hang on, I've got it on me. Yeah, usually if you send me an email, I'll send it on straight back as soon as I read it. Yeah, the reason for the passcode is that it's a very simple system just to try and stop people abusing the internet system. And it also means that you have to have an amateur call sign. You can more or less say that anybody who's on the APRS system is a radio amateur. It's not always, there's a few dodgy ones, but it's pretty obvious. See, what else can we see on the map? I've been quite interested to see what there is. You'll see various D-star contacts going on. They usually have a letter after the call sign. So sometimes a D-star can give the position system position in an APRS format. So the D-star repeater sends it to this system for display. So you can see D-star stations. You can also see weather stations as well. There's a few weather stations such as G4 TJC. So if for some reason you can't see outside the window, you can just click on it. There we go. So it's currently temperature 55 degrees C, wind 0 miles an hour, it's not raining, and it's whatever. So and that's just looking at his weather station. He's put that information onto this system. So it's like I was saying before, it's a sort of an information system. Everything's on there if you have a look. For instance, there's one of the stations in Liverpool that's put the various repeaters on. So you've got, say, for instance, GB3MP. Whoops, I'm going to click on there. And if I'm not from this area, I now know it's 145.75. And usually they put the tone frequency on, but they've not. Oh, yes, they have. 145.750, 110.9. They've got the group who runs it. So it's just a means of getting the information. So instead of having to, say, scroll the internet, it's there on the map, ready for people to see.
Why, when I look at one of the viewers for this, I see the ships in the control bay?
Well, no, if you're looking at the likes of, right, this is a system called APRS.FI. There's a radio amateur in Finland who also works at a large data centre, so he's got a few servers set up. He takes an entire feed from the APRS internet system and saves it. He also takes a feed from the shipping AIS system and saves that as well. And what he does, he has a website which can display all this stuff. Local stations too. And this particular map, it's the last hour of traffic. And if I remember right, it doesn't include the ships. No, I'm not adding the ships to it, but his website, you can get the ships added to it. And it's a very similar system, the AIS system. It's a different frequencies, different data rate. It's a similar idea. It's a position, it's an icon, it's more details of the ship. So the two things are fairly compatible, and what he's done is to add that to it. Well, that's an interesting one. If you want that link, just go on our website. You'll find that, and that's handy. If you're at a computer, you know the program, you can just go on that site, and you see all the traffic in the last hour. So you can see who's driving about and which weather stations are. Yeah, if anybody comes from Wales, it's a bit quiet over there. You do with a bit of APRS activity over in Wales. And you can see that places like Bolton and Warrington and Liverpool are hotspots. So what tends to happen, you get somebody who gets interested in APRS, and he tells his mates, and they get some kit. And then this is what happens. You see that activity tends to be in various little groups, right? You don't get a general spread. And yet there's places like Birmingham where there's none at all, but there used to be years back. But they all lost interest and went on to something else. Probably D-Star, or DMI.
I think probably a lot more showing up as you get rigs like the ID51 coming in, and people just leave them on. And
yeah, that's right. So that's see the stream of traffic going up. I was just looking at the 100 miles radius from Bolton. So you can see, get some idea of the amount of activity there is.
If you've got a rig like that, how do you actually get on the APRS system? Do you have to register somebody like yourself with a passcode like that?
Well, it depends if you're just transmitting. All it needs is an iGate, so you've got an iGate here, haven't you? So that can pick your APRS beacon up. You can send your messages, so you don't need any passcodes or any other internet stuff to do that.
But if you use something like a Pi and that on the and you want to put it on the internet and you use Linux, there's a program called Call Pass. You put your call sign into it and it will give you a call. It'll give you a passcode.
Fantastic,
yeah.
Yeah, talking about Raspberry Pi, I've changed the iGate I run at home, and I used to use various Windows machines, and I've decided I'll try one of these Raspberry Pi things. So I've set it up, and I've got it running Dix APRS, or Dix PRS. And previously, I've had sort of a system like using a computer, it might run about 2 weeks, then fall over and all the rest of it. About 3 months ago, I set this Raspberry Pi running, and it's just carried on. And the trouble is now I've lost the notes if I set it up, so when it does finally drop out, I have to start again. So, that's it. Yeah, I recommend that. It's a really good iGate program. It's simple, it just gives a text display, but it keeps running and running.
What's the program?
I've got that running off Linux and at home. I've got it running off Raspberry Pi in the motorhome.
Yeah.
Through a 3G Wi-Fi unit. The only problem I've got with that is I want to change the email address and I can't.
Right.
It's where you sign in and log in.
Oh, right.
It uses an old one.
Yeah.
I'm not bothered.
Oh,
so
right.
if whoever behind that's not bothered, I'm not.
Well, usually the favourite thing to do is to change it to something like rotate.aprs2.net, and then whenever you apply to connect me to an iGate, to a server, it will pick a server at random. And that's what I've got within on mine, so that if, say, the server drops out, you're not trying to get back to the same server, it'll just send you to one that's actually working. But, yeah, I checked it today.
Because the phone's got the Android version on it as well.
Yeah, the program we're using on the Raspberry Pi is Dix PRS, DIX PRS. It's a Hungarian guy who's written it, and yeah, can't recommend it highly because it just works.
Well, there was transmission that could up at a hospital.
Hospital, and there was Kathy Rocks who went up as well.
Right, York Hospital, right. If you look over to...
No, email address.
Right, if you look at Yorkshire, you've got...
Holland, Scarborough.
Yeah, right, it's the Grimsby lads. Again, another little cluster of activity. And what they've done, it's, they're using it to... So what they've done, it's M0KXQ, who's in Grimsby, and he's added a series of objects. So as well as stations, you can actually from a home station, you set a series of objects. So, like some guy put GB3MP is an icon. This guy's put Hull Hospital. So anybody in that area, radio amateur looking at this, and said, oh right, well that's a 24-hour hospital. And it's got position there. If you've got an app which has your position on a map display, you can navigate into that hospital. So that's
But when it comes up with Cafe Roxy, we're into the realms of advertising, aren't we?
it's getting a bit, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I've seen that one because it's
It's with the hospital ones, when it's scrolled up.
yeah. Yeah, I know what that is because I've seen that one before. If I just zoom in, put them in the crosshairs. One great thing about this is that it uses the OpenStreetMaps map, so you can just zoom in. Actually go down to the individual streets. Oh right, he's actually moving that way, that's why I feel it's this one here. No. Usually called Cafe Roxy was over this way, but you know, it gets a little bit of a grey area, you know, it's
Well, yeah, someone will clock onto it and there'll be all sorts of...
yeah, because the thing is, if that's, alright, if it's purely on the internet system, that's fine. But if that gets transmitted onto RF, it's a different thing. It really is advertising license to radio. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Although if you transmit and say I'm at a cafe, whatever it is that
Well,
advertising? You're just staying where you are, aren't you?
Well, yeah, it's something like that. You put your own call sign on it, so you won't put, you know, come to the Cafe Roxy for the best breakfast ever. You know. Yeah, so it gets a bit. I agree. There's a few people who put like the various ham stores on. Oh yeah, Cafe Roxy. See.
See what information he's giving.
So it's got Hull Hospital and the Cafe Roxy. Does that mean it serves hospital food? Right, it's just put, you know, the title is a Cafe Roxy and there's a message is put Roxy Cafe. Yeah, it's a bit grey area that one, isn't it? Yeah, I wouldn't do it. So. We send him a message? No, no. Probably won't be there.
What's the sound like?
It was. Yeah, can we have a booking for 1, 2, 3? 20 breakfast. Yeah. Yeah, we get some idea of the maps on that. That's even system is for the mapping. Yeah, I mentioned before the noise measuring receivers. This is one of the guys up in Harrogate. He's got one. Oops, what's another message? Telemetry. Right, there we go. That's the. You can see the. I don't know if you can see it there. 5 frequencies, and then the signal levels inside of it. So that's the message it's sending every 10 minutes. You can see it's a bit noisy on 40 metres at the moment for me. The other bands are quite quiet. But that's all that's been reported back and being analysed by the Propagation Studies Committee of the RSGB. And I've seen some really interesting results from that. Because you've got stations dotted all over the place. We found that sometimes you think the really rural sites aren't as quiet as you think they are. There's one guy who lives on a farm near Harrogate, his is actually a lot noisier than most of the others, so it's, whether it's expensive,
They're filing days.
yeah, could be. We've looked at weather stations, we've looked at repeaters, it's an idea of the different types of information that's available. One thing I used to do quite a lot was on a Sunday morning, it was a quiet session, just move them up to Germany and look for the guys going down the Autobahn and just look at the speed they were going. Because there's some radio amateurs over there have the fast Mercedes and the like, they have the Sunday trips on the Autobahn, and they use the APRS to show the mates how fast they were going. And, yeah, sort of 150 miles an hour is, you know, slow for those guys. So, equivalent. Crazy.
Can't be used against it because it's not just true ground speed, is it? Is it going up and down?
Probably right, yeah.
It's not accurate.
Oh,
It must have been ballpark, mustn't it?
yeah, you could argue, yeah, you could argue the case here, going on this flat Autobahn, yes, I was climbing a hill opposite. No, any questions? No. It's worth, you know, downloading the links, maybe downloading the program and trying it. It's, you know, you've got all that information there. It's quite handy to have access to.
The notes is available on your website, is it?
Oh yeah, yeah. The other one I showed before, that was a web page. That's available. You can just click on that and have that running in the background all the time. And it will automatically update.
Why is the same call sign come? So it's like 4 together or 5
Oh
together?
right. Right, that particular program he's running, he's giving me a call sign, he's sending a beacon, he's sending various bits of telemetry. Now, that's okay, but it's you know, just gibberish in the way to set it up. If you look at the one, let's see.
G4VSS, look at the one, see what he's doing.
Okay. Oh, I've got a choice. So we've got APRS. Oh, no. 144,875.
Yep.
How many devices?
That's me DVAP node at home
Ah,
on a Raspberry Pi.
yeah, another one as well.
So instead of picking him up off the left there, off the map, have you got a single search box? If you knew a call sign, say you're looking for someone up in Scotland, could you put that in, and would the map move up to that single call sign?
Probably, I don't know how to do that. I tend to just look at the map, but
Fair enough.
it should be, I think there's that facility in there somewhere. You know you can do it with the messages. Just type a send message to you. You know somebody's call sign, it'll send you out. So. Various bits of telemetry. This Dix PRS I mentioned before actually has some very interesting telemetry features on it. So you can look at the levels of traffic. Yes, so many packets per. So for instance, it's received 62 packets in the last 15 minutes. There's currently 6 stations and 5 received directly. And it's transmitted a total of 7 packets in the last 15 minutes. So you've got all this sort of in thorough drafts of it and but it's interesting to see when the busy periods are during the day. You know, obviously between midnight and sort of 5 in the morning it's very quiet, but you get peaks, especially around 9 o'clock when people are driving around. Plus if you get M6 AVD on, he's transmitting a packet every 15 seconds with a digipeater rate as well, so that he's not just transmitting his own packet, it's going through various digipeaters. When all that's settled down, he's sending the next one 15 seconds later. So he's occupying the entire RF network in the northwest every time he drives around.
He's copy, yeah.
Oh, it keeps it busy, so you know, soon it'll be news. Right, so I think that's probably covered most of it tonight. So, any more questions or?
Thanks very much for that.
Thank you very much.